Timothy Piazza was 19 years old when he died on February 4th, a night that should have been the beginning of a fun new time for him as a member of a fraternity. But instead, his so-called brothers reportedly forced him to drink so much alcohol that he fell down a flight of stairs. They then proceeded to slam him onto a couch, douse him with water, punch him. No one called for help, though they had seen him fall several times. Even after one pledge begged them to call an ambulance, they didn't do that. So here's part of the 911 call that did happen 12 hours later.
And what's going on today?
We have a friend who is unconscious. He hasn't moved. He's cold extremity. It's probably need an ambulance.
At one point in the text messages, one of the fraternity brothers responds to a question about whether the Piazza family is likely to sue. He says, quote, "They could get us for giving him alcohol that contributed to his death. Also, the guys taking care of him didn't call an ambulance right away, so they could get in trouble for negligence. I just don't know what I'm liable for as president," said the president of this fraternity. So joining me now is Timothy's father, Jim, his mother, Evelyn, and his older brother, Mike, also a student at Penn State. Welcome to all of you. I know this is hard for you, and I give you so much credit for having the strength to come talk about this, because we all know what's going on college campuses. Sure. And your son is a tragic victim of this. So when you hear that, when you hear that 911 call and you read the text messages, Jim, what goes through your mind?
It's just heartbreaking that no one reacted earlier in the evening. They had many opportunities to call for help throughout the night. Instead, they kind of treated him inhumanely, and when we finally heard all the details of what happened, it was just very disturbing as a parent, and it's something that I think about throughout the day, every day since then.
Of course you do. It's only been 3 short months, and I can't imagine how raw this is for all of you. Mike, you had to call your parents because you got the word first, right?
Yeah, I had to find out where he was, and that involved me taking a guess and calling the local hospital. That's where I found out he was, and I got there. I was the first person to get there, and when I got there, I found out that he was in really bad shape, which I didn't expect. So that was a lot to process. And
had he talked to you about this? Was he nervous about this? Because I think all these young men, they hear, what might happen, and they're going to force you to drink. And was he nervous about it?
He didn't talk to me too much about it. I know he, like most kids who are rushing fraternities, I think he was just nervous about the process of whether or not he'd get a bid, because it's so competitive at Penn State and elsewhere. It's such a large scale. For a month, the rush process drags on, and he was just nervous whether or not he would even, whether it was worth it at all for him to have gone through all of the rushing.
Yeah, no, I get it. We all hear these messages, coming from the kids at college. So what do you say, Evelyn, to those who look at the boys who have been charged with 200 counts of all kinds, from basically involuntary manslaughter all the way on down? They say, we know they're boys, they didn't know what they were doing. What do you say?
They knew what they were doing, and they weren't boys, they were men. There was a history. There was videotape going back 3 semesters. There was text messages going back. They knew what they were doing was wrong. They even identified it as hazing. They had the intent to make them drink a lot of alcohol, and then they had no conscience.
What do you think should happen to these young men?
They need to be held accountable. Right now, that's for a jury to decide.
Jim, I know you have not, none of you have seen the video, right? Because there's so much video inside this house, and that is likely going to make it very difficult for these young men. And I know you want to see justice done in this. Do you have any desire to see this video at any point?
No, I really don't want to see the video. I'm very concerned about what we'll see, and that being the last visual of my son being alive. But what I have said is that if the president of the university and the board of trustees watch the video with me, I'll do it. Because they're capable of making significant change, and that's really what we want to see.
Have you asked him to sit down and watch it with you?
I think after today I have.
Do you think he will do that?
I don't know.
Evelyn, he said, you know, this is Eric Barron, the president of Penn State. He said, you know, they're so secretive. We've tried so hard to get inside the doors of these fraternities, but if they're going to be so secretive about what's going on in there, how can we possibly do anything?
They've known that there are things going on. They put together a task force, and nothing ever became of it. They dropped the ball with making any sort of change. They've been sued before for hazing, so they know that there's a problem. They say that they can't do anything because it's not their property, but they can expel a student if they don't follow the code of conduct, and this is against the code of conduct.
And they can't say that they don't have any control because they shut the whole place down. So they had the control to do that.
Right.
Right.
Right?
They could take away the fraternity's privileges. They could expel any student they want. They have a lot of ability to take action. It seems like they've chosen not to.
Mike, you're at Penn State. How did you feel about the fact that nobody in the administration, none of the young men in this fraternity showed up at your brother's funeral?
It's just startling and painful to know that this is what some of my peers are capable of. It's just tough.
How do you feel about going back?
The Penn State community is my home. Going back, I mean, I'm going to finish what I'm there to do and get my degree, and that's where my friends are. And
Understood. I understand. What's your message for parents who have kids going through this process? Because you could be saving lives by taking this very tough step of talking, which I know cannot be easy.
Well, that's what we're here to do. We want to educate students and parents. I mean, Tim is representative of every son and daughter that is going to college, thinking about Greek life at this point.
Would you tell them not to do it?
No, of course not. There's a lot of good in Greek life. You know, it's not something that was ever for me or for my other son. Tim had an interest in it. And I know a lot of people that have been in fraternities. I hired a young man from a Penn State fraternity, and he's an awesome individual. We're lucky to have him. But they got to do the right things. The fraternities need to do the right things.
Show me your bracelet.
We have a bracelet here that says, "Live like Tim, never stop laughing." It's a bracelet that we put together based upon some thoughts from his friends as to what we should put on it. And the other bracelet says, "Piazza Strong." It was the committees that Mike and Tim served as part of their Thon groups. We've gotten a lot of support from throughout the country. People that we know have obviously been super supportive of us, but there's hundreds of people that have reached out to us, even over the past day, that have thanked us for our being out and talking about it and trying to make a difference.
If you can save even one child from going through what your son went through, and our heart goes out to all of you. We thank you very much for being here tonight.
Thank you. Thank you for having us.